Do you hate somebody's guts? Are you considering cursing someone? Let's understand the ethics and mechanics of curse work before you attempt it in today's video. Hello everyone, I am Solomon Pakal. I am a generational brujo of Cachiquel descent. I am a historian and occult researcher, going on over 2 decades in the practice right now. A disclaimer about this video. We're talking about curses. We're talking about hexes. We're talking about execration. We're talking about not nice magic, right? Let me disclaimer with this. I am not trigger happy, and neither should you. You should not be trigger happy, okay? I'm going to tell you, we're going to cover some things. And I believe that I'm a bit more equipped to talk about this specific topic than most. Why is that? First of all, I was raised in a brujeria culture. Brujeria prioritizes things like more practical workings before anything else. So we're talking curses amongst them. Like brujeria actually as an art prides itself with its proficiency of being able to curse people effectively. And we're talking about dark stuff. I'm wearing this awesome Hellraiser t-shirt. Not the Hellfire Club, the Hellraiser Club. And the time of this recording is actually on just turned midnight on Halloween. So curses, all the things spooky, applicable right now at the time of this recording. So I grew up in a brujeria culture where cursing was pretty normal, hexing was pretty normal, and reversing such things had to be just as normal. I will be a little candid here about my origins too. I did not grow up learning my stuff on the internet, nor did I just learn it in a culture of magic. I got into the practice out of necessity because someone was cursing my family. This was an advanced witch war. This was like I grew up in a witch war between witches and several, and it was not simply people dabbling. No, people had money to spend and people knew professionals, because this conflict would last for a very long time, and it was not a casual endeavor. I grew up because of a necessity of defending curses and then reinitiating curses. So this is something that I'm pretty well versed in. And I'm telling you that growing up and actually experiencing such an art is a different level of pressure. It's a different level of vindictiveness and poison. I was a martial artist. I was a soldier too. When you have people that they do scenarios of fighting, whereas if you grabbed here, then I do that, but they never go live. I don't even say they were never even in a fight before. They never spar, and sparring can induce some traumatic experiences too. There's definitely a level of violence that I think most occultists are not acquainted with. And I think there's a level of spiritual violence, I should say, that most occultists are not acquainted with. Just like how most people are not really acquainted with a level of physical violence that they think they measure up to, but they really don't, given that martial arts example I just pulled. But considering spiritual matters, again, cursing is not something to take lightly, because while you may be able to be a bully and pick on people that don't know magic, there are people that do know magic. And there are people that know magic and they know how to bite back. That's a whole different thing. So we're going to cover some do's and don'ts. The biggest do and the biggest don't all revolve around this idea of cause and effect. That's how you could layman say it. I will talk about I think a better analogy, but cause and effect. So I know Wicca gets a bad rep in this regard because people are like, oh, Wiccans don't believe in cursing, or classic Wiccans don't believe in cursing, and because of the threefold law and stuff like that. And I'm telling you right now that I think that's a very surface level and pedestrian kind of read of it. That's like a Wikipedia read of it. And you haven't actually spent time getting to know some Wiccans. Just in my area here, we're next to the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft, which has a Wiccan base, and there's other occult shops and stuff. And we've had discourses with Wiccans in their classes and discussions and stuff, and their ideas on cursing typically go from people think never but it's really, the nuances of such are not never, they're just on special occasions. From what I have found, this, I'm not speaking for all Wiccans, I'm just speaking of the experiences and dialogues that I've had with other Wiccans, that they go through a checklist that if you have exhausted all other options, then yes, you can engage in cursing and stuff. I think this is actually a healthy practice. I do not think that cursing right off the bat is the healthiest thing to do. I don't think it's the best thing to do either. Just so I can get onto like better stories and stuff like that. Why isn't it the best? When you're calling on cursing energies, you're calling on coercive energies that they're toxic to you as well. And you can get caught up in a perpetual cycle of curse energy and cursing mentality when there's even nobody to curse. And you will start associating cursing with people that don't really deserve it, like jerks at the grocery store and stuff. That's not worth your time to curse. And I think that's what Wicca was actually on to. What was more kind of self-control, things like that. I could be wrong, but all the high-level Wiccans that I have talked to, like respectable Wiccans that have some kind of status in a broader community sense, they don't completely alienate cursing. They just are definitely cautious of it, and you should go down essentially a checklist of circumstances and exhaust your options before you get to it. And I would agree. Now, that's not to say that I've never just done curses because of someone I hate it. I would say a healthy amount of times I've gone through a checklist of whether I should curse this person or not. Because it just takes time and energy. And I got better things to do. So the thing is that cause and effect are laws. It is a metaphysical law that is beyond human ideas of morality. In the grand scheme of things, in the most occult sense, like sophisticated occult sense, cause and effect is beyond us. However, ethics, they are a part of it, but they're like really in a cosmic sense very small. And that's a whole nother discussion. That's a pretty big macro discussion. But when people want to get ethical about cursing or ethical about this or that in magic, they're typically trying to ascribe human morality as some kind of supreme law that governs the universe. And you spend enough time in this game and you realize that is not true. You realize that it definitely plays a part, but it is not the end-all be-all, and it is not the supreme law. Human morality is simply a byproduct, is simply a smaller piece of what is going on. We could spend all day talking about this subject, so I will move on to the second thing. So I had a mentor who was essentially like a folk magician from Haiti. So you can imagine some of the things that they may have done. People would automatically think voodoo as that's just one thing. That's just like one part. But I had this mentor, and they taught me one of the most valuable lessons. I actually used this lesson the other day when there was a conflagration that happened. I've used this against other magicians and other practitioners. And that is, you take cause and effect and you essentially micro it down to human level even more. And what do you get? You get this law of fault and reason. And my mentor at the time, they taught me how to always stay in line with fault and reason, and how to always negotiate fault and reason. It's a moving thing. It's not simply like you just say an affirmation over and over again and you're like aligned to fault and reason. You have to move with it. And I was able to use this law of fault and reason to come out on top of conflicts against other magicians, against other practitioners, against other pretty vile practitioners over the years, and people that really meant me harm. And literally every time, I have fallen back on my old mentor's teachings of the law of fault and reason. It has served me optimally, and I have come out on top. And I cannot thank my old mentor enough. They should know who I'm talking about. Fault and reason is king, and it gives you the ultimate leverage when doing these kinds of workings. Here's another story of how to, with curses, it's not what you think it is. I come from a brujeria culture. Brujeria has a lot of curse work in it. It prides itself in curse work. Curse work is a big cornerstone of brujeria. But I'll tell you right now, there are many, many unhappy brujas and brujos. Not every bruja and bruja is happy or prosperous. And typically what happens, I've seen this with brujas and brujos, if some of them have this natural talent for cursing, what happens typically is the universe is constantly supplying them with reasons to curse. They're really good at it, and they can really make some crazy things happen to their targets. But they are often finding themselves in situations in need to curse. I'll say this, that those brujos and brujas, for I think a big cause of their problems was a real lack of mysticism, like a real lack of relating to the divine cosmos and environment from which you come from, and not looking at it from a sense of just practical magic. I think that they didn't have a good relationship with their divine environments, is really what I was saying. Like, they knew they lived in an enchantable universe, but they didn't really try to dive into the deeper implications of what that meant. And I think it just led to perpetual cycles of spiritual violence. I'll give you another story, because this was a very, I think people can relate to this position. So I was in high school, and I was a part of essentially like a military program in high school. And when it came to promotions or like spinning rifles and inspections, all these like kinds of competitions that have to do with the military, I had this rival. He and I were always like really compared to one another. And I tried to be his friend and stuff, because we were rivals, but it's kind of, I felt like we could be like a Goku and Vegeta kind of combo where we could help each other grow, because like we were in the same class. We were very much peers. We were clearly like the two best. So wouldn't it be awesome if like the two best guys like team up and like really push the envelope? But he was very jealous of me, and he plotted against me, and it was destroying my reputation in comparison to his. So I did a simple kind of curse spell. And I was patient with this guy. This was for the better part of 1 or 2 years, until I finally decided to curse him. And I had trusted him at certain points, and then he like purposely tried to embarrass me. So I was just like, nah, this is it. And I've been holding on to this hate, and I was just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I just did this. It was a very simple curse word. Because I was very young, I was just like, by this time I had 4 or 5 years in the craft, but I was still a young kid, man. I was like 14, 15, something like that. And I took a black candle, like a black taper, and I dressed it up with, I can't tell you the powder, I can't remember the powder, but I can tell you the oil was either bat's blood or black arts oil, or it might have been even a combination of the both, because I was just so pissed. And I think I even used nails, pins, into the candle. It was a simple candle magic spell. No spirits involved whatsoever. And I did this spell on him, and not only did I beat him for the most outstanding position and the most talented athlete there, relevant to the sports we were competing in the military program. Not only that, I like ruined his career after high school. I found out that he was accepted to this prestigious military institution. He essentially became like so big-headed within the first like couple of weeks that he had an outburst and said that he knew better than everybody, including the people teaching him, and he just quit because he thought he was better than everybody. Years later, I would find him working at just like a Target or something like that, and he was just working menial minimum wage. And he was still, like, pissed off at me. Like, he didn't know I cursed him, but, like, he looked at me and talked down on me. Whatever. He was, like, very angry at me. This is years after. Years. And then this is after I had joined the military, I had taken a break, and then I got back into the military. And then I think I was in New Jersey on a field training exercise. And we were doing land navigation into the late, like it was like in midnight through the early morning, and I'm on this trail doing land navigation. There's all these other Army people doing land navigation to their separate routes passing by. So I take this main trail, and I'm walking down the main trail. It's a main trail in the woods, and the sun is just like freshly coming up, and there's one other person on the trail, and it's this guy I cursed, and I said his name. I was like, no way. And he was wearing Army fatigues. And now this guy, he always wanted to join like the Navy. He like was accepted as some kind of prestigious Navy thing a while ago. until he thought he knew it better than everybody, right? And I see him, like, we come face to face, like, we're walking towards each other on this trail, like, we're bound for each other. There's nobody else on the trail. It's strange because there's all these other, like, soldiers in the adjacent trees and the bushes, right? They're doing land navigation, trying to go where they're trying to go, but me and him are the only ones on the trail, and we're walking towards each other. There were some other people on the trail, but they cleared way. They went into the bushes and stuff like that, and so we were the only ones on the trail. We came face to face with each other, and I was like, "It's you! It's you!" And I was like, "Hey, like, what are you doing here? Like, you're in the army? You're in the army now?" And he, for the first time ever, talked to me in this voice that was a bit more down to earth and a bit more friendly. And we were talking, and we interrupted for 5-10 minutes, and I was just like, "Oh man, that's awesome to hear that you're picking up this new career and whatnot. That's awesome. But I gotta get back on my route. I gotta get my points and whatnot for land navigation." And he too. We did that at the end of that field training exercise. About 3 days later, I saw he was like doing fire watch. That means like you're just like staying up all night watching the hallway where everybody else sleeps. So I got to talk with him a little down to earth and like just talk about like life goals and stuff like that. And I felt like he was like growing up. His disposition towards me was clearly very different, right? I wish him the best. I used to hate this guy. I used to hate him. Like, he did a lot to me, man. Like, he really tried. He went out of his way to try and embarrass me and stuff in high school, and specifically to try and get promotions in our military program and make me look bad. I used to hate this guy. But at this point, I was like, this was like quite literally almost 10 years later, something like that. And I just wished him the best, and I left. I think it was a couple of months after that point, or it might have been a year after that point, we went to Fort Knox for a big evaluation training. And there was this girl who I knew was in the same unit as him. And her and I were supposed to be getting deployed to a foreign country. And we sat down at the mess hall, the cafeteria, and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's that guy? How's he doing?" Because he's part of that unit. And she was like, "Oh, you didn't hear?" I was like, "What? No, I didn't hear anything." She said, during a facsimile fire exercise, not a live fire exercise, he apparently stood up in the middle of the grass, like when people were like firing their weapons, and he says, "I can't do this anymore. I quit. I don't want to be in the army anymore. I'm done." And his entire career was forfeit. He spent years trying to get to that position that he was in there in the field. And then if he had passed that, he would have commissioned as an army officer. And he forfeited it right then and there in the field. So I tell you that story not because I'm trying to brag or anything. I'm trying to tell you this story because it's like we don't know how curses can work out. And was that the curse that worked out? We don't really know. We don't know a lot about this mystic stuff. But I'll tell you right this. He was kicked out of the academy after high school because he thought he knew too much. And he had problems with authority in the army because he thought he knew too much. He thought he was better than me and everybody else in the high school military program because he thought he knew too much. The way I see it, and I did do divination years later after these events to see what was up with that. And sometimes, especially in teenage years and whatnot, but especially if you have an immature person too, they could be 30 and still be immature. You do one metaphysical thing, and it can cause a snowball effect. A snowball effect of manifestation that maybe someone's character development is not ready for, and they continuously just fall down and keep tumbling down. And it seems like to me his character flaws just kept tumbling down and kept going a single direction, which was hubris. But that's enough stories for today. Curse work, it's not all that it's hyped up to be. There's a lot of unexpected things to happen with it. It's a very nuanced approach, and again, I am not trigger happy. Disclaimer, I'm not trigger happy. However, at the same time, I know more about the mechanics of cursing than a lot of other practitioners, and I am not, like, I'll do it. I'll do it. You mess with me enough, I'll do it. Real skilled magicians and people that come from practices like brujeria and stuff, they know a thing or two about a thing or two, and they know how to navigate those things too. It's highly diverse, and it's not like a one-size-fits-all. The way it manifests can be really strange and unexpected and rippled in regards to the story I told you. For the do's, a law of fault and reason. Don'ts, just don't be trigger happy, amongst other things.